I started to work with the Southland region, and we did a 2-week introduction down there around the communities with the social services, with teachers, professional development, a lot of professional development. And the response from the community was so powerful that they looked to find ways to keep providing this education on a continuing basis. And that resulted in a trust being formed called the EPICC Trust. And that is now resourcing my knowledge and resources to go into that community, hopefully on a 2-year period. And the first 12 months will be to really bring about a fundamental change in the region. And we're going to cover the health sector, the private sector, schools. We're going to work with teachers in professional development, work with the youth, starting with primary, intermediate and college-age students, working with parents across all sectors to work with all stakeholders in that community and look at the challenge that they face within the context of their life or their work, and bring in education that helps them to use this technology safely and ethically. It is a marvellous technology. It does connect us with the world, and we've got to get past this visceral response. Often you will see in the media and the news accounts of situations where people have got into trouble, where there have been varying degrees of outcomes, some very tragic, others further down that scale. But we often get a visceral response to that, which is obviously an emotional response to something we don't quite understand. What we want to do is strip away what's the complexity of this and look at what the issues are underneath that. And in most cases, it is about behaviour and the choices that we make. It has got nothing to do with IT, and it is more of a health and safety issue. Once we start in that region, the objective is to bring about a fundamental shift in Southland that allows that community to start to also educate itself, because it is vital that communities have enough knowledge to start educating themselves through teaching, through education.
The Roastbusters incident, the Windows scams, these are the types of things that you're dealing with.
Absolutely. And the term Roastbusters, if you think about that, when this story broke in the media, there were victims in that situation. And that term, I believe, was a term created by these potential offenders. I don't know what the process is going on there yet, so I don't want to comment too specifically on that. But there was a group of boys, I believe, and there are these potential victims, which were the females, in terrible situations where there was a unique exposure of very personal information about these individuals. And then when that broke in the media, in the news, the public's response to that was very appropriate. And we do need strong community responses to these kinds of things, these outrageous things that we see. What concerns me is when we take on the terms that these people create to name what they're doing, and we continually use those names in the media. It creates, it gives it a life of its own. It seems to fuel the whole thing. And if we are truly committed to looking at what all of these various types of abuse are, we are disadvantaged when we use names that are created by the offenders themselves. We've got to be much more accurate with what is going on. What I was encouraged by was the response from the communities around this country to say that we've got to deal with that. The media has to be also very accurate in its reporting of that. And when we get into schools and work with youth, boys and girls, between 14 and 17, one of their concerns was that they didn't think that they would get listened to respectfully, or that people wouldn't believe them. And we looked at that, and we put together workshops under the banner Strong Together, which brings in police, people like myself and others, to consistently bring back a message for those young people that you will be respected, people will listen to you, and you've got to be able to come forward. And if you don't think you're getting the service that you're entitled to, keep knocking doors, keep asking. But I do want to say on behalf of people like police and child, youth and family, I'm not in those organisations. I do from time to time work alongside them when we're presented with situations, and I work with children that are in care of people like child, youth and family. The people that I work with are absolutely dedicated to doing the best that they can for these youth. So when I talk to youth, I promote that side that I see, and I see it for myself. And the only reason I bring that forward as a statement, if we do not celebrate what we get right, we are less likely to get potential victims to engage these services. And so it is vital that they understand that they can come forward and they will be listened to. So I encourage any youth out there that thinks they have a problem, particularly around the things that we're talking about, come forward and talk to people that can help you.
Now, John, it's not just the youth, of course, that we have to be concerned about. We have scams happening in our own homes with people ringing up saying they're from Windows. What should people be looking for with these types of phone calls?
Well, if you sort of look back through the 90s and the early 2000s, we had the Nigerian 414 scams through email and things like that. And that is still around, that is still going on. And today we've got similar types of scams. All of these scams across the phone networks, like the public switching systems and voice over IP, all of those are, the motivation for that is to take money, to commit some kind of crime that allows the people to get money or personal information that can lead to them to commit other crimes. We've got to really understand what our response is to that phone call. If we do not talk to them, if we simply put the phone down, it is impossible for that cold caller to trick or deceive that particular person. And to give you an example of one of the common ones, you'll get an Indian-sounding gentleman that claims to be from Microsoft, and they'll phone up. And they may be using an auto dialer, which is used by marketing companies, and the auto dialer continually calls numbers randomly, and then somebody picks up the phone and says hello. The auto dialer responds to that by connecting it back to the criminal, the phone scammer. And then they engage in social engineering, and they will tell that person that you've got you may have a keylogger on your computer. They will direct them to a part of the computer where there is a log of records, and when the potential victim sees that record, there are red things that say alert or failure, and they become concerned that there is a problem with the computer. And what the phone scammer has done is directed them to that part of the computer to see that log, and once that victim becomes anxious that there is a problem with their computer, they become more compliant to the requests of the person on the phone. If they simply put the phone down, none of that can occur. None of it can occur. So I am asking people, when you get those calls, don't blow a whistle, because you might get the whistle blown back at you. Just put the phone down and do not speak to these people at all. What happens is, it doesn't matter how many times we seem to tell people this, it often doesn't get through. And I can tell you, this community and communities around New Zealand are bombarded by this. The reason that these cold calls work is because people respond to them. The single biggest impact that we can have on stopping that is by consistently putting the phone down and not engaging them. And, when you tell somebody in a group, don't answer that phone, don't comply with that request, they are logical and listening and learning, and when you do recall and comprehension, they go, yes, we won't do it. But when they're at home, if that phone rings and they pick the phone up and somebody says that this is Microsoft, or it's indeed the local bank and you've got a virus on your computer, they can become anxious, they become outcome focused on what the person is telling them, and they're not task focused. And when you're not task focused, you're unable to be logical about what's in front of you. So just